the law is now that if he engages in something that resembles an official act that is within like the type of thing that a president can do, which is order somebody to shoot somebody, the SEAL Team 6 example that Judge Florence Pan in the DC Circuit gave, the answer to the question is the president's immune.
Yeah.
That is just shocking and bad and completely contrary to what anybody you had asked this of would have thought until 2024.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to George Conway Explains It All to Sarah. I'm Sarah Longwell, publisher of The Bulwark, and because I'm not a lawyer, I've asked my good friend George Conway to explain the legal news to me, and today the legal news is, George, America has decided to elect its first convicted felon as president, and I'm sure that our listeners are wondering what you think about that.
I think convicted felons should not be president. I think they should not hold public office.
Hot take.
Yeah. But apparently a majority of the people who voted on Tuesday and up till Tuesday felt differently. Who knew?
Well, I didn't know. I did think that she was going to eke it out in the industrial Northwest states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nebraska too. Thought there was going to be enough, white voters to sort of offset the slide with Hispanics and others. But the fact is, as we're digging through the data, as my whole team is, the bottom fell out of Hispanics, but the entire country shifted about 6.7 points to the right. And in those industrial, like in the swing states where the campaign was being waged, she did considerably better, about 3.5 points better, but it wasn't enough in the face of sort of an overwhelming rejection that, I think probably was based on the focus groups that I listened to weeks in and weeks out of this season, where people thought that their biggest issues were the economy, inflation, cost of living, and immigration. I just think it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
To do it. But I guess I thought that Trump was going to be such a uniquely flawed candidate that America wouldn't do this, but they did.
Yeah,
they did.
and to go to your point, you saw the enthusiasm, or you saw the numbers of the people, the energy on the people who were anti-Trump or pro-Harris. And then, and the question, and the thing is, as somebody who grew up in the 1970s, I do not understand and I people are going to say, wow, maybe it's your economic status or whatever. But I lived through the 70s, and I'm not sure I'm seeing what the inflation problem is. And I think it's just the fact that we are so used to a non-inflationary environment that the relatively small amount of inflation that occurred, I think about 18 to 30 months ago, which resulted, ironically, from spendthrift and fiscally irresponsible policies that predated the current administration. It's still unfathomable to me. I know you said otherwise because of what you've heard in the focus groups. It's just unfathomable to me that could be a decisive factor in an election, in a year where inflation is under 3%. And the bout with inflation is nothing trivial compared to what we've seen in relatively recent history and historically. I mean, these are non-inflationary times. We have had non-inflationary times essentially since 1982, to tell you the truth. So, with occasional blips here and there, it's incomprehensible to me that was a driving factor. But if that's what people I mean, people's perceptions are based upon their own experiences, and their own experiences is they had never seen inflation higher than 2 or 3% for any degree of time, and that it's not comprehensible to me as someone my age. I'm never going to understand that. I don't know whether there are other things going on, and people cite that as a proxy for something else, that that bothers them, or and immigration. I don't understand. I mean, the Democrats caved on that issue, and the only reason why we don't, we the Republicans never did anything substantial about immigration. Never built the wall. The only thing they did was the Remain in Mexico policy. It was probably a mistake to, well, I mean, there are legal issues there. You got to have a whole podcast on that.
We should do that sometime.
Yeah, there was a solution, and Donald Trump cynically made the assessment that he didn't want a solution. He doesn't want a solution to these things. He doesn't actually want to solve problems. He likes problems that he can exploit, even if they are non-existent problems, like people eating pets in Springfield, Missouri, or kids going to school and getting sex change operations, which does not happen since you can't even have your kid get aspirin without your permission at school. I just think it comes down to the susceptibility of a large portion of the American public to misinformation. I hate to say that. I mean, it sounds patronizing, and I know, and I don't denigrate the people who do, and there's no question that inflation did negatively affect people, but not to the degree that one would want to elect somebody who absolutely cannot, who knows nothing about economics, even though he professes to be a businessman. Someone who, I mean, it's funny. It's like I saw something today where people all of a sudden, a business, I don't know if it's true. Maybe it's as apocryphal as eating cats and dogs. It's certainly not as malicious. But there was a story passed about online today about how a business explained that they had to take certain steps now because of the potential for tariffs that would affect their business in the future. And that required the CEO to explain to his employees, to their shock, that a tariff is not a tax paid for by foreigners. It is a tax paid for by businesses in America, and who pass those costs on to consumers. I mean, I mean, is that true? Is that? I mean, the fact that he could keep on saying that and without voters laughing in his face tells you something about the modern American electorate. And the fact, the fact that, well, just so many things that I despair for the country, and not because I think that the policies of a Democratic administration are ideal in any respect, but I don't think people actually understand the issues that drive their votes. I think a lot of people really, really don't understand it. I don't think they understand how the political system works. I think a lot of people really don't understand a lot of things that makes them susceptible to demagoguery of the highest order. I'd like to test that proposition. Maybe you have research that illustrates it one way or the other. It's not a pretty subject, but it's something I'm just fascinated with now. We don't, and particularly with the way that information is delivered to the public these days, which is through whatever means they consume it. and they have the right to consume it any way they want. But there's good information, there's bad information, there's information that actually informs, and and there's information that just stimulates some dark recesses of people's brains into believing things that are worse than they actually are, or blaming people for things that weren't those people's fault. Or I think there's just a lot of that goes on, and that's the reason why. Not that it's not that, oh well, that's why Kamala Harris lost the election. It's why we had an election with a convicted felon running as a nominee for one of the major parties to start with, and that bodes ill for the nation.
So I was going to try to jump in there and just make an observation / I guess joke, but it's not a joke because it's true, which is if you send your child to school and they are a boy and they come back a girl, you have the wrong kid. Okay. You didn't pick up the right kid, because nobody's getting a sex change operation at school.
Right. And I also think you would have actually seen this happen. You would have seen the parents on television, and there would have been an investigation into why the school did that. And there would have been an actual real story. Has anybody seen the litter boxes that are in the schools for the kids who identify as pets? I don't know that they really want to identify as pets.
No, that's not a real thing,
because that could get them eaten in certain places. But there's a lot to unpack here, and it's not just because there is a shift a few points to the right or to the left. And it's not going to be because of these priorities that we see in the exit polls that the economy was the most important thing, and this was the most important thing. It's like how we got to the point where we had this choice with a convicted felon who is a pathological liar. That's the disturbing part. The disturbing part was already there.
Yeah.
Okay. And it wasn't, I too expressed some confidence in the last few weeks. I've always believed, that Kamala Harris will pull it out. I never, when the first time I met her, she said she viewed herself as the underdog, and I thought that was exactly the right attitude. And they played like they were the underdog. And the notion, I think, the criticisms, I think that are being bandied about, they should have done that, they should have done this. I don't know it would have made a difference. So the real issue is, why were we in this circumstance to begin with a convicted felon, adjudicated rapist, insurrectionist, is being even tolerated as a person who has any role in American public life, along with people who are equally not people you would want to trust with anything, like an Elon Musk or a Robert F. Kennedy. People can't discern, if they cannot discern that these people are unwell and disturbed, and it's like the anti-vaccine hysteria, that caused, in Virginia, that led to what happened in Virginia. And it's, the notion that people aren't horrified that a man with a brain worm is going to be put in charge of health, but not oil, thankfully, not oil. We're in bad. We have a problem in this country, and the problem is us, is a lot of us. And the fact that a lot of people in this country are not available for the receipt of facts and reason and coherent thought.
Okay. We're going to dig.
I can say these things because I'm not running for anything.
Yeah, we're going to dig into that. I'm going to just do a quick ad, although it feels crazy to do an ad when we're talking about the whole ball game, the fate of things. But we do have to pay the bills. So as the chilly days of fall roll in and the holiday rush begins, it's easy to forget about taking care of yourself. Enter Mud Water, a soothing yet energizing coffee alternative that helps you stay sharp and balanced throughout the busiest time of year. Made from a blend of chai, cacao, and calming adaptogens like lion's mane, which is a mushroom, reishi, and chaga, Mud Water gives you a natural boost without the crash or coffee jitters. Mud Water is like your holiday self-care ritual in a cup, packed with antioxidants and wellness benefits that nourish your body while keeping you centered and clear-headed throughout the chaos of the season. And as you prepare for the holidays, it makes a perfect stocking stuffer for anyone in need of a little extra self-care. Whether you're powering through gift wrapping, decking the halls, or simply enjoying a quiet moment to yourself, Mud Water is the ultimate way to bring balance and calm to your fall holiday routine. Give Mud Water a shot and save big because our listeners get up to 43% off your entire order, free shipping, and a free rechargeable frother, which we use a lot at the office. Head to mudwtr.com/Ask George. When the survey asks, please support our show and tell them we sent you. George, I got to tell you, I feed this to the kids in the office. I have them drink it all the time just to keep their energy up. There's a lot to do here. Yeah, it gets you all hopped up, ready to go.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're going to need the energy for what is ahead of us, which we're going to talk about a little bit more.
We also need other kinds of mushrooms, but that we'll skip that.
Yeah. The question is, do we need energy or complete disassociation? It's an open question. It's an open question. For a limited time.
I mean, another version of it. That probably be a big killer too.
For a limited time, our listeners get up to 43% off your entire order, free shipping, and free rechargeable frother when you use code AskGeorge. That's up to 43% off your order with code AskGeorge at mudwtr.com. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Tell it was us. Support our show. Whether you're prepping for a busy day at the office or just trying to keep your mind sharp, Mud Water is here to help you feel your best naturally. Start experiencing the benefits of functional mushrooms today. Functional fungi, I think they call it. Okay, here's what I have to say in response to some of what you said. It's tough to break in with you. You get rolling and
I know, I'm sorry. But you asked me. And for some reason, every time I go on this show called Ask George, you ask me stuff.
I know.
I don't know why.
It is true. It is true. It's your show. It's your time to shine, your time to roll. But I got to say,
about things I don't know anything about, like your focus groups.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I just kind of want to. I guess I want to. I don't know if disagree is exactly it, but this idea that you can't believe that inflation would be a driving factor. I got to tell you, I listen to people in the focus groups all the time, and I do think if you make under $100,000, and your grocery bill goes up by $50, $100 on top of your gas bill, on top of supply chain disruptions. And here's the thing, man. Post-COVID, the entire globe went through this, right? This is a global phenomenon, and incumbents have been losing across the globe because people are mad about high prices. Now, look, there's not a button that you can push that as president that's lower inflation.
No. And part of the button that was produced that produced this was pressed before the current president became president.
Yeah, well, this is where, when Trump says, were you better off 4 years ago? Everybody, I'm like, no, I was locked in my house. What are you talking about?
Correct.
But people know what he means, which is always the case, right? They know that he means prior to the pandemic, did you like the economy better? People did. I'll never forget. And this is where, I think I got a little wrapped up. So the reason I thought she was going to win, despite me believing that it was very possible that she might lose. The reason I thought she was going to win,
look, in fairness, we all thought it was very possible she would lose. That's why we did a lot of the stuff that we did.
Yeah, no, you needed to do the work, and the work mattered. The fact that in the states where you were running a campaign, like an active campaign, she did 3.5 points better than in the places, because it's a shift all across the country. All across the country, things moved about 6.7% to the right. And people need to think about that. And like, why does that happen? Well, it does happen when people say, hey, I go to the grocery store every week and things are too expensive and I make not enough money. And I just, there's a lot of things going on in that where social media, people talk about social media. One thing social media has allowed us to do is compare ourselves not to the people in our neighborhood who oftentimes are in a very similar socioeconomic class as us, but it allows you to compare yourself to everyone.
Right.
And so that creates in people's minds a sense that they're really falling behind.
Right.
And they go to the grocery store, things are more expensive. And look, my parents have told me about times when there's 13% inflation and gas lines. And you're right. Something you said, people haven't lived through a moment of high inflation.
I lived through those gas lines where you basically, whether you could get gas on a certain day depended on the last number in your license plate.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't live through that, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that people who are under 45 are like, whoa, I've never seen costs go up like this. And the young people, she underperformed with everybody except for college educated white women. That was the only group that kind of went up. Yeah. And look, a lot of our folks, a lot of anti-Trump Republicans, like she did in Pennsylvania, 8% of Republicans voted for her. Like there was a meaningful crossover. The problem was like bottom fell out with Hispanics.
I mean, that should have been enough except for the other factors.
Except for everything. He put up bigger numbers in the rural areas. He put up better numbers in the rural areas. He basically improved with everybody else. Yeah. A lot of, he continues to find low propensity voters, people who don't turn out in these midterm elections. They show up for general elections and they're mad about only one thing or two. And it usually is the economy and immigration. And man, they aren't listening to podcasts, at least not ours, right? Not political ones. They're not tuned in and engaged broadly. They just know here's the thing. I have this argument with my buddy, JV Last, who's my best friend, but we have really fundamental disagreements. And one of them is that he tends to be like, look, the macroeconomic environment is good. And I'm like, yeah, if you are, upper middle class, like lots of benefits are accruing to you. Right. The Dow is up, like the overall macro economy is good. But if you make under $100,000 and you're trying to support a family, or you make $50,000, man, the cost of gas, cost of groceries, cost of those things going up. And even when the thing about inflation is that even when it cools, those prices still stick. They still stay high. And people are just pissed about that. Right. And like, I listen to focus groups who are like, I hate the guy. But like, I'm going to turn off the TV and I'm going to enjoy his economy. And they do have kind of a cartoon sense of Trump as a businessman.
Right.
And I got to say, and I wonder if you agree with this, because I'm in my feelings a little bit, and I'm going to admit that. What? I'm in my feelings a little bit.
Okay.
I've got a cocktail for this. I am
mud water.
Yeah, I had that earlier. Now I'm just in the booze.
Liquor and mud water.
Now I'm in the booze.
Yeah.
The thing that I can't get over is Joe Biden. He should never have run for a second term.
Oh,
absolutely. I know that people might be like, no, Joe Biden was a good president. Here's the thing. One of the things that I always argued in going into this about independence, I was like, they're going to break late for her because they're going to be like, we want change. She's going to be the change. But I was also like, who's the incumbent? Like, is he the incumbent or is she the incumbent? And I thought he would end up being the incumbent. But it was her, right? She's tethered to Biden. And I think people who listen to this podcast might not realize this, but I argued this a lot when I was being really annoying and saying Biden had to step down after the debate. But I also argued vociferously that he should not run for a second term. Voters have been telling us this the whole time, that he was too old and they didn't like his record. Now, whether that's a communications problem, whether that's just a problem of circumstance, whatever it is, the fact is voters didn't want him to run again. And as a result, it deprived the Democrats of an opportunity to run a primary that allowed them to pick a candidate that had a lot of distance from him. And instead, it ended up having to be her. And even though she ran a technically good campaign, I actually don't fault her very much. I do lay a lot of the blame at Joe Biden's feet for being arrogant enough to think that he should have run again, as opposed to being a bridge to a new candidate who could have run as a really separate and alternative to him.
Yeah. And I get that. I mean, we kind of lived through those discussions together in various ways.
Yeah.
I was one of the people who was hesitant to just cast aside Joe Biden because it's like, changing horses that late is something. But I understand that. I mean, there was a big buzz in Washington sometime, maybe like a year and a half ago, among Democrats who were really worried about Joe Biden running. I mean, it was really that you couldn't go to an event where there were lots of Democrats. I remember I remember a book party in particular.
I don't know. You hang out with fancier people.
I hang out with it was the book party with about the who wrote the book about the Atlantic guy who wrote the book about Biden. Anyway, it was that there was all this talk about. It's like,
oh, Mark Leibovich?
No. It doesn't matter. But the point was, it was like there were a lot of Democrats in this town who were upset.
Yeah.
That Biden was running it because they had the sense that he wasn't,
Guys, people felt he made an implicit promise to be a bridge to a new generation,
right.
Which meant he was going to run for one term. Nobody thinks the 78-year-old should run again, except Trump. Trump apparently, everybody's
apparently he doesn't. The rules don't apply to him, and maybe it's his skill with microphones. I don't know. So
I see what you did there.
You saw what I did there?
Yeah,
you did. Okay. So I don't know. I mean, I mean, the Democrats have such a great bench, and I mean going deeper than the super, like the most everybody's talk about Gavin Newsom. I actually don't. I don't think
Gavin Newsom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But I mean, when you go a little deeper and you look at the options available from an Abigail Spanberger to a Governor Whitman.
Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro.
There's so. I mean, the
Wes Moore. You got a lot of good
Wes
people.
Moore would be. He's a.
Do you know I saw him just recently? I was in a green room with him, and I was like, "This is the handsomest man I've ever seen in my life." He's just a handsome devil.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I got on Wes Moore. It's very handsome.
No, well, okay.
But they do. But they have a good. You're right. I think that they have a strong bench. I think that there had been a Democratic primary that would have allowed them to talk about what they saw the party being going forward. Like throwing Kamala in. I don't think people realize what a challenge it is to define yourself. With 100 days to go, when you ran in a primary not that long ago, and you ran pretty progressively, and now you're trying to run for the whole country.
Yeah, I mean, even though that traditionally has been the way it happens, right? Everybody tacks to you tack to the center.
Sure, that's politics 101.
That was like the old. It was like back when I was a kid. That's how it was done. Everybody did that. Nobody said, "Oh, that's weird. That person ran, to the right in the primaries and to the, I mean."
But can I tell you what's different now? Actually. This is like a real thing that I think people need to grapple with. One of the things that people say all the time that they like about Donald Trump, even when they hate him, they say, I like that he's not a regular politician. And one of the things that was always in the back of my mind about her is that she was running a technically quite good campaign, like a textbook. In 2004, it would have been a very strong campaign. But one of the things that people like about Trump is his ability to just shoot the shit and sound like a normal guy, not like a regular politician.
The discussions about Hannibal Lecter. I mean, those are the kinds of things you
it's stupid. It's stupid, but people do kind of are like, yeah, give me a little entertainment with my politics. I'm not saying it's good where we're going. I know it's bad, but analytically, I also see the guy sat down with Joe Rogan for 3 hours and just spitballed. And voters like that. We are in a different environment where normal politicians have a tough time succeeding, and people want, even when a person is saying things they don't like, if they're saying it authentically, and people kind of trust them, they believe it more. It's why do people watch us? Why do people like the Bulwark? It's I know where this person's coming from. They're kind of funny, and I like them. I want to hang out with them. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about George, obviously, or Tim, but
and Donald Trump.
But I
No, I think we'd have a
think
good
that's where
time. If
people are
Donald, we should have
going.
Donald Trump on the podcast.
I
We'd
do not want
have
to
a
have
great
Donald
time
Trump
with
on the
him.
podcast.
It would be
I do
very
not care for
entertaining.
him as a human. No chance.
Yeah.
I think that the media environment has changed as such, and I think they ran a good but conventional campaign. And Americans, we can sort of lament where people are, but I also think to win, we have to recognize where people are.
Right. Well, but we can lament and recognize that the next time and whoever it is on the R side, I don't know that it is going to be Trump. Maybe it's going to be J.D. Vance after he successfully invokes the 25th Amendment by being conniving. And I mean, that's the one thing that Trump better start worrying about, is that Vance will do that. Pence would never do it. Pence did not have the cojones to think of doing that. And Vance, I'm not saying that Vance is some kind of a bold human being. I mean, he's an enormous suck up, but there's nothing that if he sees an opportunity to push the other guy off, he will, it's like the Sith Lords. You can only have one at a time.
Oh God, Trump's going to be so old. Hold on. I want to talk about this a little bit more, but quick, we're just going to get a second ad in.
Okay.
Our last sponsor today is HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. This holiday season is just around the corner, and we're looking for ways to spend and stress less. HelloFresh makes mealtime nearly hassle-free with delicious home-delivered, chef-crafted recipes that come together quick and are less expensive than takeout. Step out of your recipe rut and make fun, flavorful meals without needing to hunt for specialty ingredients. And HelloFresh's pre-proportioned ingredients mean less waste. Easily customized recipes, so each meal is just the way you like it. There are always options available to trade or upgrade proteins or swap out side dishes. And did you know Green Chef is now owned by HelloFresh? And with a wider array of meal plans to choose from, there's something for everyone. We love when HelloFresh sends us our meal kits at our house because we got to feed the kids. And it's especially good for me because I don't actually cook. And so it is a contribution that I can make to the house to make life easier. And my kids love it because the food is good. So get 10 free meals at HelloFresh.com/free. Ask George. Applied across 7 boxes. New subscribers only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals just by going to HelloFresh.com/free. Ask George. Sign up with America's #1 meal kit today. All right, man. So listen, we're probably not going to have much Trump legal news to talk about going forward, but there's
going to be no Trump legal news until.
Yeah, but talk to me about the sentencing on November 26th in the New York election interference case.
He can be and will be sentenced on the, what was it? What date did you say it was?
November 26th.
26th. Okay.
That's the New York.
I thought 18th was in my head, but okay, the 16th. And we'll see what the judge does, but it's going to be completely meaningless. Other than it'll be purely symbolic, whatever he does, because Trump will not serve this sentence. Okay, I mean, in theory, he's not president, so he can be tried and sentenced. He would not, in the ordinary course, even if he had lost the election, be immediately remanded, because he would, in all likelihood, have been entitled to an appeal before he was remanded. But in this case, I mean, the fact is that the state of New York is going to have no authority, no power once he becomes president, to incarcerate him. Now, the fine might be a different issue. Okay, so it could be the judge may exercise his discretion and say, fine, I can't effectuate this, but I'll take my shot at a fine. That may be the approach he takes. I don't know. As for the other cases, they're gone. And the Justice Department, I mean, if I were Jack Smith and I saw some indication this is what they were doing, it is the policy of the Justice Department. It has been the policy of the Justice Department dating back to 1973, and it was during the Nixon administration, and it was reaffirmed in 1999 during the Clinton administration that the Justice Department believes that a proper interpretation of the Article 2 of the Constitution means that a sitting president cannot be federally indicted. And I think that also means indicted by the states, although that wasn't specifically, I'm not sure that was specifically addressed in the questions that the Department of Justice answered in their opinion, in their opinions in 1973 and 99. And so the Justice Department, regardless of who's running it, on January 20th, 2025, has to dismiss these cases because they can no longer be prosecuted under the standing Justice Department policy. So they might as well dismiss them now, because the only way he wouldn't become president is if he does, it's just, no, he's going to become president. I think you probably could do it. You could do it on January 20th at 11:59 or 12 noon, or effective 12 noon, once he takes the oath of office and submit that to the court. But the one thing that will happen, I believe, because it's required by the special counsel regulations that would not otherwise have happened, is special counsel regulations require a final report from the special counsel. They ordinarily require you to report what their charging decision was if they decline to prosecute. And this is effectively going to be a declination to prosecute. And I think they're entitled to list all of the reasons, that reason why and the reasons they would have prosecuted if he had not been elected president. I think it's their chance to actually lay out a lot of the evidence that remains under seal to this day. I think they should get that report going, and I think for the sake of history and for the record, they should do that in the next few weeks, and Merrick Garland should release it publicly as soon as it's finished, so that we don't have a situation where it is held by, a Republican attorney general who doesn't want the facts ever to see the light of day. And
that is a great point.
Yeah.
And that is interesting. And I hope that they do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the country deserves that. I think history deserves to see what other evidence there is. I think at the end of the day, I mean, obviously the Trump people will object to that and they'll say it's political. And it's like, no, sorry, dudes, you're getting this indictment dismissed. Take what you can get here. And I think the public owes this was the most serious crime ever committed by a president of the United States. And I think it just needs to be laid out there for the historical record. And if Donald Trump doesn't like it, so be it.
Yeah. It's an
and Georgia's gone, and Georgia's gone too. I mean, there's nothing going to happen there.
It's all over.
It's all over.
And we should sort of be clear-eyed about that.
There's not there. It's all over. The most we will see is two lengthy reports. I would say, because they've got to do the documents case too. But we know the broad outlines of what he did. I mean, they had him dead to rights in the documents case. But the appeal that the special master has taken from the ridiculous decision of the judge dismissing the case will be dropped.
Do you have any, if you look back, do you have any big frustrations with how the cases against Trump proceeded?
Look, I have been agnostic on the question of whether the Justice Department acted with sufficient alacrity early on. I know some people who virulently assert, like Marcy Wheeler, that anybody in the media or any legal talking head who believes that the Justice Department wasn't moving quickly along on this stuff in the first couple of years after the Biden inauguration doesn't know what they're talking about. And she has her arguments about how we can see that from various documents that were filed in court. And she may be right, or she may, it could be that one of the things that, one of the things they did that I think led to the way this case was prosecuted was they started from the bottom up, which is something that is not an unusual prosecutorial method. But there were more than there was more than one criminal conspiracy here, and I do think it was possible to do what they did for those people who committed crimes on physically committed crimes on Capitol Hill. I do think that some people could have been called to testify before a grand jury long before they actually did, when events were fresh in early 2021. And it may well be that one of the things that happens is when you take somebody's deposition or grand jury testimony before you have done other investigative steps, you don't know as much. But the thing about a federal prosecutor is not like a civil deposition. They can bring somebody back. And unlike in a civil case, even though perjury is prosecutable in civil cases, it's much easier to prosecute somebody for perjury in a criminal case for misleading a grand jury or telling or for making a false statement to an FBI agent. Some of the I think we would have been possibly in a different position if a lot of the people who were at the higher reaches of the organization of that rally and in the White House were interviewed and interrogated sooner, including the former president.
Yeah.
Although the former president would probably have been become a target, and maybe they wouldn't have done it. But they should have brought a bunch of other people in, I think, first. And I do believe that it wasn't their intention to go there and prosecute Trump. I think they suffered from, Mitch McConnellitis. McConnell said on February 13, 2021, basically this isn't our problem because he's no longer president. I think he was legally wrong, but he left open. He basically also said that Trump is subject to prosecution under the criminal law. And the reason why he didn't want to take the step of barring Trump from future public office is he found it inconceivable, I'm sure at the time, that Trump could ever recover from what he had done to the country and what he had done to himself in January 2021. But memories are short. And I think also I think that going in, I think the Biden administration didn't want to look at it from the prism of anything other than vandalism. Okay. And we'll see. I mean, there'll be the stories will come out. I mean, the books will come out and written. We'll know more about what was done and when. And I also wonder, how much of a fire the January 6th committee lit under the Justice Department 2 years later. And it may, and again, I'm not passing judgment on the Justice Department. I'm not passing judgment on Merrick Garland. It may be that they did everything they could have done when they did it, and that they didn't for reasons, investigative reasons, or resource reasons, or they had logical reasons to do exactly what they did, or they were doing things that I just said they may not have been doing. I don't know. But it's certainly something that deserves a historical look, because it made a difference. And I think, people around the world are shocked that the American legal system, basically took 4 years to look at something that was obviously criminal and not get it to a trial. There's something seriously wrong here. And that's before you even get to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
We've talked about the Supreme Court decision and my criticism of the Supreme Court decision and my belief that, notwithstanding the grave misjudgment that the Supreme Court made, it did not preclude the prosecution of Donald Trump. But now now we know his prosecution is precluded. And what is the scary part about that now? The law is now that if he engages in something that resembles an official act that is within like the type of thing that a president can do, which is order somebody to shoot somebody. I mean, the SEAL Team 6 example that Judge Florence Pan in the D.C. Circuit gave, the answer to the question is the president's immune.
Yeah.
Okay. And not that is just shocking and bad and completely contrary to what anybody you had asked this of would have thought until 2024. It's even worse than that. Because if let's say you're a criminal with a criminal sociopathic mind, just speaking purely hypothetical, and you became president of the United States and you wanted to do something criminal or arguably criminal. Let's just speaking, this could happen in some other world, right? You have an incentive to use government employees, government appointees, government resources, and not private resources, party resources, campaign resources. In other words, Nixon had it all wrong. I don't know what Nixon knew about the plumbers and so on and so forth. But Nixon, that stuff would be in-house. Okay, today, if you're doing. And Nixon, and the thing that brought Richard Nixon down was merely the suggestion to, I forget who it was in the Oval Office at Tom Haldeman or Ehrlichman, that they get the CIA to lie to the FBI about and to tell the FBI that they need to lay off the Watergate investigation because, the Cubans who were involved in the break-in, who were ex-CIA, had something to do with the Bay of Pigs, and it was a national security issue, which was a lie, and which was revealed in the summer of 1974 after the Supreme Court ruled unanimously against him and said he had to produce the tapes. That was it. People were so horrified of that the Republicans went to the White House and said, "You have to resign." They thought that was a crime. Everybody thought he could be prosecuted for that. That was obstruction of justice. Okay, and it was obstruction of justice. But under Chief Justice Roberts' decision, had that been the law in 1974, it would have been immune, because he was simply telling people in the Oval Office, he was telling members of the White House staff to tell one agency to lie to another agency, which is having interagency communications and directing interagency communications is within the outer perimeter of the presidential official duties, notwithstanding that it was obstruction of justice. Nixon resigned for no good reason.
Well, there was a good reason. There's a good reason.
But I mean, if under the law as it exists today, Nixon could have just basically given them the thing, or better yet, if he had basically said to Rosemary Woods, who knows what happened to the 18-minute gap? I mean, if he told somebody in the White House, his White House counsel, or the janitor at the White House, or whoever, to take the tapes and burn them on the ellipse, that would not have been prosecutable.
Okay.
That would have been official.
We're going to do a whole episode about what presidential immunity means in the context of Trump, as well as some other things. I will say, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my phone because Susie Wiles has just been named White House Chief of Staff. We're going to go into all of this next time. We'll also discuss next time whether or not George Conway and I are, in fact, going to the Gulag. There is, I hope they send us with our OneSkin. But George Conway,
there's a lot of sun there.
I know.
We need
As always, thanks for explaining the legal news to me. Guys, we got a lot to talk about still. Don't forget to hit subscribe, but we will see you next week. And good luck, America, but it's all going to be okay. We're going to stay together. We're going to keep talking about this. All right.
Absolutely.
Bye, guys.